Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem of the Republic of Zambia. Please be reminded we will be singing all three stanzas and the chorus. Kindly remain standing as we have an opening prayer offered up for us by the Chaplain General, Bishop Kondwelani Sakala.
Mr. President, good morning, sir. Before I invite you to prayer, allow me to quote Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7. The Bible says, "Wake to see that the city where I sent you as exiles enjoys peace and prosperity. Pray to the Lord for it, for as it is prospers, you will prosper." Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we give you praise, we give you glory and honor. We want to thank you for a beautiful country, Zambia. We honor you for it. We thank you that, God, you have given to us with all its natural resources, with all the opportunities that now are. Everything that, God, you have given to us, opportunities for its growth, we are grateful. Thank you for Mr. President. Thank you for all those that surround him. Thank you, God, for this meeting today, a meeting that is so focused to the prosperity of this land. We therefore pray that, God, everything that is deliberated today and takes place today, let it be graced with your presence. We ask, therefore, that, Lord, as the deliberations will be going through, we pray that it shall not be like any other meeting, but that, God, everything shall work together to the prosperity of this nation. Bless, therefore, this official opening ceremony. This we ask in the blessed name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
You may be seated. The President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Honorable Dr. Stumbeko Msokotwane, Member of Parliament, invited Cabinet Ministers, the Provincial Minister, Lusaka Province, Honorable Shil Muliata, Member of Parliament, the Provincial Minister, Copperbelt Province, Honorable Elisha Matambo, Member of Parliament, the Secretary to the Cabinet, Mr. Patrick K. Kangwa, Your Worship, the Mayor of the City of Lusaka, Ms. Chilando Chitangala, the Executive Director, International Growth Center, Professor Jonathan Leap, the Deputy Director, African Department, International Monetary Fund, Dr. Costa Christo, senior government officials present, permanent secretaries present, members of the diplomatic corps, the representatives of the United Nations lead partners, representatives of cooperating partners, representatives of the private sector, the District Commissioner for Lusaka, Mrs. Rose K. Zulu, distinguished invited guests, colleagues and comrades from the press, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the official opening of the Zambia Economic Growth Forum 2024. My name is Kamiza Chikula, and I will be assisting with the running of this official opening ceremony. Without any expenditure of time, please allow me at this time to make welcome to the White Lectern to give opening remarks, none other than Professor Jonathan Leap, Executive Director, International Growth Center. Professor?
Sorry, we've had a mix-up on the slides, so I'm not sure if I have the slides here, but oh, is it? Apologies, we've had a mix-up on the slides. We're just trying to get that sorted. Let me start, and apologies again, but in interest of time, let me start, and I'll perhaps try to depict a bit in words what you might have seen in the slides while we're trying to get those set up. I really wanted to touch on just three points, one of which we already talked about in yesterday's first day of the forum, and the other two we'll be talking about today. But these are issues that were really first raised with us by His Excellency as top priorities for economic policy, for driving economic growth in Zambia in the coming years. And those three, one, as I said, we talked about yesterday, are agriculture, mining, and then supporting evidence-based policy. And I want to just say a few points about each of these, starting with agriculture. We've recently completed a study around the yields of the agriculture sector in Zambia, which show that potential yields in Zambia are in the region of 12 metric tons per hectare. Actual yields in Zambia are 2 metric tons per hectare. So there's a great potential for developing the yields in Zambia with benefits both, of course, for the farmers themselves, but for the economy. Okay. With benefits, so there's great potential, given that the potential yield is something in the region of 12 tons per hectare, and current actual yields are only 2 tons. There's a huge potential for increasing production, increasing yields in Zambia, with benefits, of course, not only to the farmers themselves, but to the economy more broadly and to exports and so forth. So there's an urgent need to develop effective policy measures to achieve this. Sorry, let me just load the slides now. Okay, so it's here. So okay, good. Oh. Sorry, okay. Can I do this less than full screen? Okay, I think it's too long. Nope, they're not seeing now. Okay. Apologies. Let me go back. Okay, so just quickly to finish on agriculture, as you can see in Zambia, there is, as there is in many countries across Africa, a very strong gap between potential yields and average actual yields, and that tells us just what scope there is for policy. I think the other point that we've talked about is that there's scope for policy action even within the current budget, because of the fact that so much of the budget is currently spent on measures that need redesign. So FISIP, most importantly, responsible for about 73% of the agriculture budget last year. If that can be reformed in combination with new policies, then within the same budget, there's a lot that can be done. Your Excellency, you've already mentioned the role of irrigation. There also is a big role, we believe, for making better use of digital services, digital extension and credit support, new credit windows, also adaptation generally, so that we're not only increasing yields, but making it more resilient to climate change going forward. The second issue, which we will talk about today, is mining. And here, what this figure shows is just how important copper is across the full range of mineral. Okay, sorry, apologies. Just how important copper is. It's the initial dark blue bar across the range. Okay, across the range of renewable technologies. That's what's setting up Zambia for such a positive, positive economic demands from the international energy sector moving forward in the next few decades. And it's very important to take full advantage of that in at least 2 different ways, as we'll talk about later today. One of those is to ensure that Zambia begins to derive much more value added from its minerals. Currently, the domestic, much of the ores are shipped without beneficiation, and there's a lot of scope that can be done there. But the other thing is to integrate supply chains for the mineral industry more effectively into the economy as a whole. The final point I want to make is about data. This is a graph of the progress in electrification across Zambia between 2005 and 2020, and shows, the first is the remarkable progress that has been made, but that's not why I wanted to share it with you. I wanted to share it with you because this is data that's obviously central to the Ministry of Energy, obviously central to the economics ministries in terms of designing effective policies, but has not previously been available to policymakers across government. This data was created using data in the Department of Education on whether schools were electrified or not. And using those data from the Ministry of Education made it possible to extract this mapping of where electrification has advanced and where it hasn't, something that, of course, is necessary if we're going to begin to understand better the economic benefits of electrification and then how best to target it going forward. All of that to make the point that data is the bedrock of effective policy making. And in this respect, we were very pleased to hear yesterday the announcement from the Honourable Minister of the establishment of an evidence lab within the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, which IGC will be supporting. The aims of this lab are to bring together the vast resources that already exist in data held by government in Zambia, but not used effectively in policy. And so we'll be using the lab as a way to develop the more effective use across different departments. We've had an economist who's talked with 14 different departments across government to understand what the data needs are and how we can feed data more effectively into policy. So just briefly to sum up, we think the three very important issues for driving economic growth in Zambia going forward and driving effective policy are to focus effectively on the agriculture sector and the new policies that are needed there. Similarly, on the mining sector, to take full advantage of the new opportunities that are being created and to avoid repeating the experience of previous copper booms. And then finally, to take better advantage of the vast resource Zambia already has in the data held by government to channel that into effective policy. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Professor Leap. At this time, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Director for the African Department at the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Costa Christou, to address us. Dr. Christou.
Good morning, Mr. President. It's a great honor to have you with us today. Over the last 3 years, the IMF has been working closely with the Zambian authorities in a very strong partnership. And the idea is that to support the homegrown reform and macro stability program that the authorities have put together. This forum, the second Economic Growth Forum that the IMF is co-hosting with the IGC, also is a great opportunity to bring out the complementarities between the work that we're doing at the IMF, looking at the macroeconomic side, with the work that the IGC is doing, looking more at the sectoral aspects of the economy. Also, over the past 2 days, it has been a great opportunity to bring together policymakers, academics, and have really a very frank exchange of views and ideas between them. Our discussions since yesterday have touched upon Zambia's transformative journey that has really reshaped its macroeconomic landscape. All this took place in a very uncertain external environment characterized by a multitude of shocks. An ambitious, growth-friendly consolidation, fiscal consolidation, was accompanied by a strategic reallocation of resources, moving away from the poorly targeted and inefficient public spending toward significantly increasing social spending. A plethora of reforms has been undertaken, including those aimed at improving transparency and tackling corruption in order to create a business-friendly environment. Now, going forward, the current uncertain global economic environment, which is characterized by fragmentation of trade and investment and geopolitical tensions, underscores the importance of agile and adaptive policy making. This should entail efforts to maintain macro stability and at the same time continue to implement the structural reforms. Some of them are very difficult, but it's really very important to stay the course. It's also important not to lose sight of the bigger picture and the ultimate objective, which is to raise Zambia's growth potential and also ensure that growth reaches all segments of the population, including, most importantly, the poor. Achieving better growth outcomes would entail recalibrating the copper-based and public investment-driven growth model of the past toward a more diversified and private investment-led model. To this end, it would be important to take full advantage of Zambia's mineral wealth, by promoting FDI, increasing value added, and also moving up on the supply chain. In addition, diversification of the economy would benefit by enhancing labor productivity, leveraging the population dividend, and addressing infrastructural gaps. Diversification should span all sectors of the economy, including agriculture. To conclude, the Zambian economy has been extremely resilient, but on the face of the increasing frequency of shocks, including those from climate change, continuing to build resilience and transforming the economy through the implementation of structural reforms would help create jobs and also unlock a stronger and more inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Christo. At this time, I am delighted to invite to the lectern to address us the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning, Dr. Stumbeko Msokotwane. Honorable Minister.
Mr. President and our distinguished guests from abroad, colleagues, ministers, and all the distinguished captains of industries, heads of various institutions, it's a pleasure to be standing here in front of you this morning to welcome you formally to this engagement that we've had over the last 2 days. Mr. President, 2.5 years ago, you took over a country that was facing huge economic challenges. Huge challenges because the debt was out of control, inflation was raging, confidence by those with money to come and invest in our country was gone. And as I've been saying the last few days, what many of our citizens were not aware of was that we're on the verge of the total destruction of the mining sector on which we depend so much. Because even those that didn't seem to be closing, we're actually thinking of leaving our country, which was going to be a disaster beyond anyone's control. In spite of all these challenges that we're facing, we've worked very hard under your leadership to stabilize the situation. Debt restructuring is way advanced, with what we owe to the official sectors already dealt with, remaining only with the private debt. Mr. President, the confidence that we so much require in this economy has come back strongly. Those mining sectors that said they were going to leave, they've stayed and putting more money in our economy. And of course, others have been taking a look, making announcements of new findings, pledging more money to be put. The mining manufacturing sector, who knew that one day Zambia would be exporting fertilizers? But we're exporting fertilizers today. Ceramic tiles, and many other items. All these are measures of confidence that are returning to our economy. But we are more, if I reflect, Mr. President, on what we have done with the public resources, public finances, it was just not imaginable a few years ago that children from the poorest family can go to school like the way we did ourselves, exploiting their potential to the maximum, totally free and covered by government. Mr. President, a few years ago, civil servants retiring from the public sector, they would have to wait for 5 years before they get their benefits. Today, within 3 months, they can get their benefits. Mr. President, a few years ago, our countryside was like one coming out of a civil war. You entered into a classroom. The classroom itself would be like, I can't even describe it, maybe an animal shed or something like that. Where were the children sitting? In the dust. Did they have teachers? No, they did not have teachers. Today, we've made so much progress. So I believe that, Mr. President, just giving a few examples like this, the reform program that we set out to pursue 2.5 years ago is working. And what remains is to build more and more of this, especially in the area of getting the growth to be moving faster and faster and faster so that jobs are created, incomes are made, lives on the Copper Belt come back to normal, and many other places. So it's a great pleasure when we have colleagues from the IGC, colleagues from the IMF coming here to meet with us, give us feedback on how we are doing, giving us suggestions of what more needs to be done. I think for me, this is very encouraging because if they saw no hope in Zambia, I can tell you, Mr. President, if they saw no hope in Zambia, they would not be here today. They would just be saying, this is a basket case, lost case. We don't want to waste our time with a country that is not serious. The reason why they are here is to recognize the strong efforts that we've made and to encourage us to soldier on to a better future. So, Mr. President, we are privileged this morning that you've come to join this group so that you also express your views, give encouragement to the people who are in this room, give encouragement to your citizens that we are solidly on track to a better future tomorrow. So that those who said their worst, what did they say? That their worst was better than your best. We can demonstrate to them that, in fact, they are terribly misguided, terribly wrong, and they don't know what they're talking about. So with that, Mr. President, is it me inviting the President to speak, Master of Ceremony? Okay, so the honor is mine to invite you, Mr. President, to speak to the people. I thank you.
What we want is a microphone, isn't it? You may take your seats, please. Thank you. You may take your seats. Thank you very much. May recognize the Minister of Finance, who has just spoken. and other colleagues from our cabinet, Zambian cabinet. Let me recognize our colleagues from the IGC, National Growth Center, IMF, and also your team members. I know you have team members that work with you. We have other international visitors, important visitors, academicians, intellectuals. Also recognize the public sector representatives that are here, Governor of the Central Bank, and obviously diplomatic corps, our cooperating partners that are here, the private sector, our private sector, and if there are any of the private sector colleagues that are visiting, we recognize you as well. And indeed, if I may say, just distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the media, of course, is recognized. Let me express my delight, our delight as the government of Zambia, but more importantly, the people of Zambia that put us in these public offices. Extremely delighted on their behalf that we're having this second, if you like, platform on our economic growth agenda. Yes, the Economic Growth Forum, but really it's about our economic growth agenda, which we have set out very clearly, even in our days in opposition. We're very clear that the economy, its growth, and working with the private sector as one, unlike them against us, will be the center, really, of our government. Because we know that if the economy is functional, it's growing, it's expanding, like we've dubbed this year, the year of economic expansion, 4 jobs for our youthful population, 4 business opportunities expansion, 4 social support ultimately, in that order, carefully structured in that order. Economic expansion, 4 jobs, 4 business opportunities, and for sustainable social support. That's the way it works. So we're very delighted that IGC, IMF, you are working with us on this central theme of our government. Thank you for the work you've been doing behind the scenes. I had a meeting with my colleague, the IGC upstairs, before coming down here. Very good session, and I see his presentation, very summarized presentation, runs the theme that we discussed, the issues we discussed upstairs. And yesterday I had a meeting with the IMF colleagues. I believe we had a very good meeting. Again, in there we focused on the things that we need to do, given the challenges that we face, global challenges, Africa regional challenges, and country challenges. We still want to keep, and we emphasize to keep our eyes on the ball to grow this economy for obvious benefits. So I'm very delighted that these meetings are going on. I know the colleagues have been meeting other members of our government, ministers, permanent secretaries, and others. And of course, the Bank of Zambia. And I do believe the private sector is getting engaged as well by the colleagues themselves, so that they can get a feel of what we are as a society, as an economy, as a community. I think that's very important to us. Unlike some governments before us, we have no issues that the IMF can have sit down with the bankers, the private sector, so that you can hear each other out. And then we can sing from the same hymn sheet. And to us, that is very important, extremely important, and we encourage that. And the important thing is to say things as they are. Sometimes there's noise, as the Minister of Finance put it, where people claim that their West is better than our best. It's difficult to understand. So if their West was declining the economy, growing from 6% to minus 2.8%, last year we grew by 4.3%. So numbers don't lie, but we don't want the experts, we the business people, the experts, to basically get taken away by the noise we need to stick to the issues. We need to stick to the facts, the parameters that will help us solve our problems. So having said that, I think I've, in a way, emphasized the importance of working together. Doesn't matter which angle we come from, let us work together for the common good, for the common thing. And I have heard a couple of things that my previous speakers have indicated, and I think I agree with them by and large. But let me just emphasize the importance of whatever expertise we have, whatever role we are performing. Macro stability is very important as a given to assist us achieve our agenda. Macro stability is very important. We need stable, first we need inflation which is basically acceptable. We had set ourselves our targets, we know that. And I think there's a bit of some slippage there. Last year, by and large, we were below single digit, just around 9. Now we're creeping over to 13%. We want to keep this under control. We want to keep interest rates attractive to business and for businesses to borrow knowing that they can do something gainful, something commercially gainful, and be able to service the debt. So the cost of money is important. I've said this several times. Cost of capital, long-term, medium, short-term capital is very, very important for our growth agenda, for our economic expansion agenda. Exchange rate stability is important too, because it just supports this environment of the 3 or so variables, support us deeply in our growth agenda, economic expansion agenda. But this macro stability is only as important as it affects positively. It allows us to work on sectors, agriculture. Prof has said it well. We have a lot of room, opportunity to improve our productivity from the same hectareage that we're working on. And I want us to focus on that as you deliberate in this hall. From the IMF angle, World Bank angle, from the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Agriculture, Ministry of Water. Ministry of Water is integral to ensuring that WAMA itself plays its role. The Minister of Green Economy is very important to make sure ZEMA does not stand in the way of us taking decisions that allow us to improve our productivity. Given climate change, one of those issues is irrigation. So we want to make sure we utilize our water, which is our resource, before it gets into the Indian Ocean, and then becomes international waters, and then we become salty, for that matter. So while it's still fresh water, we want to utilize it in our country, generated here. Some of it ends up in the Congo River, from Lake Mweru, Luapula River. So it's very, very important that we drop the macro issues that we want to be stable into the sectors that will help us drive growth. That, to me, is important, that we're contextual all the time, we're deliberate all the time, even in meetings like this. It is important to recognize that, yes, we have a drought now, very unfortunate, but we can flip the coin, do two things. One, feed our people. There's no question about that. We have to readjust what we do, our budgets, our own domestic envelope, resource envelope, and our partners' envelopes to be able to support the population that responded to our call to grow their own food. If it wasn't the drought this year, we were going to produce a lot of agricultural produce, which would have also assisted in pushing our economic growth agenda, as most of our people are engaged in agriculture. So, but the coin flipping I'm talking about, it now allows us the rare opportunity to drive resources away from consumption areas into the agriculture for irrigation, for higher productivity. And we don't have to cut more trees to create more fields. The same field will give us 9-10 tons per hectare of maize, as opposed to 3 tons or under 3 tons. The same field will give us the second crop, possibly a third crop. These must be conscious things that we take into account when we deliberate in a meeting like this. And it will show us the importance of working as one team. I said to my ministers that They must find it normal to have coffee in each other's office, sitting with their permanent secretary and their host minister and permanent secretary and director or procurement colleague. It should be normal to solve or to deal with one particular issue. That helps to unlock the growth opportunity that we have as a country. So I believe it is also important that we cannot ignore mining. We want diversification, but mining describes us as an economy, but not the way it has happened all these years. Chingola, Kalulushi, Mufrila are not looking better despite producing so much copper over the years, over 100 years. This government wants to turn things around so that the communities can see value into their kitchen, into their sitting room as producers of copper. So is Northwestern Province. So is almost now in our country, all the provinces of our country are able to engage in some mining. But what we want is legal mining, 1, 2, mine not only to extract, but to process, to beneficiate, to value add. That again triggers our economic expansion agenda. Colleagues, sit in this hall. Doesn't matter who you represent, who you work for, yourself or somebody. We want to pull ourselves into this sort of deliberate conversations. I see the ZRA Commissioner General, and I was watching him on the program. I do watch what you people do in the media, and made a very good point. Out of how many 200 plus mining licenses, only how many are contributing to tax revenue? How many? Only 7. And we're a mining country. Mines must contribute to growth of the economy, to job creation, to fair treasury revenue. So with the numbers we have, the issue is that what are we doing? Since mining is chosen here as one of the critical sectors. Not to overtax. Remember, I'm a cattleman. I was brought up in a cattle crowd myself, born in the cattle crowd. If you over milk your cow, the calf will die. And you will have no more milk anyway. That's important, but the balance is critical. It cannot be right to have those sort of numbers. But more importantly, it's just not the revenues for the mine and therefore the economy coming from extraction. We want to see us getting involved in the trade across the spectrum. We want to see, as I said, more value addition, beneficiation, because it adds on to economy. Professor and I, the two professors and the minister and a few people were discussing upstairs. What is driving the Indonesian economic expansion? Mining is one of them. The way they're treating their resource endowments from extraction through to processing, value addition, and producing final products. Why should we import copper wire to allow this light to brighten this room? Why? It's what this House must answer. When we answer those questions, we'll be able to contribute, to act on those issues, to contribute to economic expansion, and we'll create more jobs. And Copper Belt will not be just a hose all over the shore. I talked about mining legally, mining with correct methods, technology, equipment. I just wanted to complete that point. But also an offtake, so that even our small artisanal miners, once they mine legally, and will not allow them to mine illegally, then they have an off-taker that pays them a fair price for what they produce, which goes into a processor. I think this House should be discussing those issues because, Prof, that's the economic growth. That's where it will come from. That's where the jobs will come from. Minister, we discussed already upstairs. So I did mention also the issue of our energy profile. With 1-2 droughts, we created food insecurity. We created energy insecurity because we are hugely hydro. Time has come for us, whatever sector we're discussing. The Mingomba project, for example, the largest find of copper over 100 years. We want to open that mine. Where is the energy? Because we're reliant on hydro, where is the energy? It's not there. Installed capacity is there, but the battery is not there. Kariba Dam battery is gone down. So really, alternative energy becomes important in a room like this when we discuss issues of economic growth. I'm drilling things that are obvious, but I'm angling them in a way that we are conscious as we have conversations of the things we need to do and do differently, but better. That's the point. So, I know academicians, all of us, will say evidence-based decision is the way to do. I think we have enough evidence. We have enough benchmarking. As I said, Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, we are discussing upstairs. So we can't be talking of these things over and over. What we expect out of this conference, out of this forum, is that we can agree almost non-contestable measures that are critical once implemented, and we must implement to get our economy going, despite the drought, despite other shocks, cholera. It's an opportunity to clean up our unplanned settlements. It means investing in those areas. When we invest in those areas, it means economic expansion will come. It means jobs. We do the roads, drainages, water supply, sanitation, shut down shallow wells, shut down pit latrines. There will be some investment going in there. So, the Minister of Finance touched on the argument that free education has brought problems. As I said earlier, don't listen to those arguments. Those are arguments to reinforce bad behavior of the past. We don't invest in skills. This expansion we're talking about of the economy, who will work on the economic sectors if we don't have skills? Artisanal skills in particular. And we have responded by allowing guys who cannot go to university like many of us did. Very small number, privileged number. But we need the plumbers, we need the carpenters, we need the, if you like, welders. And this economy must provide support for that. Such conversations must provide agree on deliberate measures that will lead to our skills-based development, which will support the very economic growth agenda. And ZAM chairman, you need those skills in your factory. Sometimes you have to go to Mozambique. It's true. All Zimbabwe to get those skills. But we have our own warm bodies that need to acquire those skills, and we should do that. Not just for government, but also for the private sector. ZAM itself, Zambia National Farmers Union itself, the bankers themselves must understand the importance of these artisanal skills. Because if your clients you lend your money to are not able to work their projects properly, it will create a larger impairment, in your balance sheet. There's no question about it. I can confidently talk about, I'm looking at the APSA chief executive there. We discussed these things when I used to be chairman of this Barclays board here. And I'm sure you've advanced those discussions now. That it's a client who is good and is capable of utilizing the credit you've extended is what you desire, because it reduces your impairment and it makes you look good. So we are in one situation here. I have taken enough time. But let me conclude by saying, we would like to see clarity of outcomes from a platform like this. At least generally things that are agreed that need to be isolated and then implementation, implementation, implementation. Tell us in government the things that stand in your way. Tell us. We've set up the Presidential Delivery Unit to address those issues. We've set up the Public-Private Dialogue Forum. I don't know if Andrew Chikwende is here, in order to bring the private sector to, if you like, a live relationship with this government as one team. But we know that that's not enough. If there are other measures you are able to suggest that will assist us to get the implementation of the agreed remedial measures, we are happy to hear those. And we are happy to take them on board for one purpose only, to get things done, to grow our economy, to create jobs, business opportunities, and for social support for the old, the weak, the retired, the differently abled, and indeed for children, early childhood development, which we were discussing yesterday somewhere. Thank you for your kind attention.
Truly appreciate that keynote speech, Your Excellency. May I now invite to the lectern to deliver a vote of thanks Mr. Chance Kawaye, who is the Executive Director, Indawa Agriculture Policy and Research Institute, also known as IAPRI. Mr. Kawaye, sir.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, our Minister of Finance and Economic Development, Cabinet Ministers present, our colleagues from the IGC, most welcome to Zambia. Indeed, our colleagues from the IMF. I also noticed there are many other colleagues from Diplomatic Corps, our UK colleagues. Let me just say, for brevity of time, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my rare honor and privilege to stand before you and say a few words in terms of vote of thanks. Let me start with our President. President, we do know you have a very tight schedule, but you did find time to come and address us and indeed officially open this extremely important second Economic Growth Forum. Your Excellency, this forum has brought in what one could call the top-notch economic movers and shakers of the Zambian economy. They are here, Mr. President. You've given us marching orders in the field of agriculture, in the field of mining, and indeed in the field of data. Yes, these three are critical for the Zambian economy to move forward. You've talked, Mr. President, issues of productivity. Yes, from yesterday we discussed in a lot of detail how we can increase productivity. It does not make sense that in a country where we've bred top varieties in terms of maize, hybrid varieties, that can give us potentials of 14, 15 metric tons per hectare, we are struggling to have an average of 2 tons per hectare. This dismal performance cannot continue. We do know that if a farmer is taken care of properly, given proper seed, given proper fertilizer, and is able to follow basic agroeconomical practices, there's no way that he can get less than 5 tons per hectare. And that immediately triples the requirements of food, of maize that is produced in this country. We've understood. You advise. You've not only called on agriculture, you've called on the water ministry. Yes, so much water which can be harvested. I do recall as a small boy in primary school, the late President Kaunda, literally at the point of shedding tears, that so much water is going to Zambezi and into the ocean. And in another few years, we have drought and we don't know what to do. I think, Mr. President, your advice is spot on. We've all heard. You've instructed the ministry. You've instructed all of us to start damming this country. The drought that you referred to that we're having this year, in my understanding, as an agricultural economist, I've never seen anything like this. Mr. President, colleagues, I did take time to go to Eastern Province, and last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I was in Southern Province. I went to Mamba, I went to Nazezi, I went to Namwala, Monze. There's actually no maize to talk about. We are this year, Mr. President, expecting the opposite of El Nino, which is La Nino. So from October, according to meteorological department, we are now advised that we're going to have a lot of rain and maybe floods. Shouldn't we now be taking stock? What are we going to do? We're going to have so much rain that is coming. I think, Mr. President, I don't know how else you can talk to us. We just have to put our boots on the ground and move. I would like, Mr. President, to assure you that we've heard the direction that you've given us. Let me then also thank our colleagues from the IMF, from the International Growth Center, whom, as IAPRI, we've already started working with them very closely. We're very thankful for coming in this country and being part of advice in terms of economic growth of this country. We thank you for what you are doing for this country. Of course, our colleagues IMF, who are within and also in Washington, also thank you for your support. The ministry, or not the ministry, the government of the UK, and of course, that's where we have our, the London Economic University, what is it called? London School of Economics. We are already using your data very effectively. We do have data, Mr. President, and our colleagues from IGC. We do have data. We have key policy institutions within the country. But we need to compare. We need to work with you. No one has monopoly of wisdom. So we're very thankful to have you in the country and working together to advise our governance. I cannot end without thanking, Mr. President, the presenters who really since yesterday have been presenting, and also the analysts. These are the people that were here to analyze and discuss with all of us in this August House. I think the debates, the discussion have been very positive. We spent a lot of time discussing agriculture yesterday. We spent also a lot of time discussing the issue of climate change and what really the country should do in terms of climate change. We discussed that yesterday. We'll be spending some time today to discuss issues of mining. You've already given us some directions on what we should do. Yes, why should we have 200 licensed mining companies and only 7 are able to pay? It doesn't make sense, colleagues. So those are areas, Mr. President, I can assure you that we're going to look into serious. Each one of you will be given some direction as individuals and also as groups. Finally, thanking all of your colleagues who have found time to come from your respective companies. I've seen my colleague from Zambia, Association Manufacturers, the banks, research institutions, individuals, permanent secretaries, all of us are here. I see John Patton is just behind there. These are gurus that have been in this country for such a long time. He is here. Mr. President, we have the right team here to move the economy forward. Once again, thank you, Mr. President, for coming, and we wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Kabaye. By way of guidance, we will be concluding the presidential ceremony with the singing of the national anthem, after which His Excellency the President will take leave, and the front row only, the distinguished delegates in the front row, will then join him at the designated backdrop for a quick photo shoot. For the rest of the delegates, we will remain seated after His Excellency has taken leave, and we will then proceed into the next session. And so, without further ado, may I ask that we rise and stand at attention for the singing of the Zambian national anthem. Thank you so very much, Mr. President. We're grateful for your presence, and the team will guide to the backdrop where the photo session will be conducted.